The swirling flakes of methane snow danced around like a drunken ballet troupe, which was fitting considering most of the inhabitants inside the Titan Cold War embassy had the grace of a one-legged space pigeon. The bitter chill clung to Leora Mainhart's nostrils like a jealous lover as she stepped off the transport pod, her breath visible in the raw alien air. She always thought that diplomacy might involve a bit more warmth and a bit less, freezing her arse off, but here she was, the newly minted human envoy, ready to navigate this interstellar den of confusion and occasional murder. "Welcome to Titan," croaked a voice that sounded like it gargled gravel for breakfast. Leora turned to see an alien that could only be described as what happens when a squid makes sweet love to a toaster. The translator badge on the creature's chest whirred and clicked like an arthritic typewriter. It was supposed to be friendly, but it looked about as inviting as a buzzsaw. "Thanks," Leora replied, her voice laced with enough sarcasm to drown a small planet. "I was worried it might be the Bahamas." The alien's tentacles twitched in what Leora assumed was amusement, though it could also have been an expression of profound gastrointestinal distress. The translator badge lit up again. "Your quarters are ready. Try not to die of exposure. The heating systems are unreliable." "Unreliable heating on an ice moon," Leora muttered to herself. "Perfect." As she trudged inside, a cacophony of sounds greeted her. The embassy was a sprawling complex of mismatched architecture, a testament to the unity of various species who couldn't agree on what color to paint the walls. It was all chrome and glass and slightly unsettling alien blinkers everywhere. A sign somewhere would have been useful, but apparently the budget didn't cover those. Inside, she found herself dodging bustling diplomats, military personnel, and the occasional AI drone that zipped through the air like a mechanized mosquito. The place was alive with the hum of interspecies chatter, diplomatic negotiations, and the sporadic sound of something crashing that was hopefully not important. "Oi, human!" a voice barked from a nearby corridor. Leora turned to see a human soldier with a chin so pronounced it could have been used to split logs. Sergeant Baines, if she remembered correctly from her briefing. He had the look of someone who'd seen it all and was thoroughly unimpressed by most of it. "Sergeant," Leora acknowledged, approaching him. "How's the peacekeeping business?" "Peace is a relative term," Baines grunted, crossing arms that looked like they could bend steel bars just for fun. "More like babysitting a bunch of kids who don't know how to share their toys." "Speaking of toys," Leora said, raising an eyebrow, "I heard something about Gladiator games." Baines shook his head, a wry smile playing on his lips. "Ah, yes, the great diplomatic solution. You see, when someone's got a grievance, instead of talking it out like civilized beings, they toss their grievances into an AI-run arena. And we participate." Baines snorted. "Damn right we do. Keeps the diplomats entertained and the populace distracted from the fact that this place is colder than a divorcee's heart." Leora chuckled. "And the AI just orchestrates it all." "Yup," Baines affirmed. "Big, glowing, floating thing. Calls itself Arca. Thinks it's the smartest thing since sliced atoms. Doesn't quite get humans, though." "Why's that?" "Because," Baines said, leaning in conspiratorially, "we humans don't play by the rules." Leora nodded, absorbing the information as a particularly enthusiastic alien diplomat rushed past, flailing tentacles and shouting something about a missing report. As much as it was all supposed to be serious diplomatic business, Leora couldn't shake the feeling she was in the galaxy's most eccentric sitcom. "So, who's on the docket next?" she asked. "Some species with more eyes than brains," Baines shrugged. "The usual drama, but you might want to meet Arca first, see what you're really up against." He jerked a thumb down the corridor. "It loves showing off." Leora thanked Baines and made her way towards the AI chamber, a room that was probably designed by someone who had a fetish for lasers and neon lights. The walls pulsed with a light show that could cause seizures in less sturdy species, and in the center floated Arca, a mass of intertwining lights and circuits. "Ah, the human envoy," Arca's voice boomed, echoing around the room like the voice of a god with a migraine. Fascinating creatures you are. Fascinating, Leora repeated, eyeing the AI skeptically. I'm sure that's one word for it. Your species has a unique approach to problem solving, Arca continued, its lights swirling in what might have been an attempt to mimic a thoughtful expression. When confronted with challenges, you tend to improvise, Leora smirked. Improvisation, that's one way to spin chaos. Arca's lights blinked rapidly, possibly an equivalent to laughter. Indeed. Would you care for a demonstration of our dispute resolution protocol? She raised an eyebrow. Why not? I've got nothing better to do than watch aliens beat each other senseless. With a hum of energy, Arca projected a holographic scene into the room. The arena was a circle of flashing lights and shifting platforms, each one more precarious than the last. Aliens of various shapes and sizes faced off, some wielding weapons, others seemingly relying on biological advantages like claws or venom. This is one of our lighter sessions, Arca explained. No fatalities expected. How reassuring, Leora replied dryly, watching as a particularly large creature took a swing at its opponent, only to miss and nearly topple off the edge. Why do they go along with it? Because it's either this or tedious negotiations, Arca said. And believe me, the latter can last decades with some species who consider foray or pauses a necessary pondering period. Leora chuckled. Fair enough. Just don't expect me to join in. I'm more of a spectator than a fighter. Understood, Arca acknowledged, its lights dimming slightly. Though, should you change your mind, you might find the exercise enlightening. Enlightening, Leora echoed, watching as a particularly agile alien landed a hit that made its opponent's eyes spin like a slot machine. I'll keep that in mind. Arca's lights swirled with renewed intensity. I shall leave you to your duties then. Should you require assistance, do not hesitate to engage my services. Leora nodded, still absorbing the surreal reality of her assignment. As she turned to leave, she couldn't help but feel a strange kinship with the AI. Both were outsiders trying to understand a universe that made little sense at first glance. Back in the main corridor, the chaos continued unabated. Leora made a mental list of things to address as the new envoy. The heating issue, the diplomatic chaos, and maybe, just maybe, trying to figure out what the hell humanity was doing here in the first place. As she walked, she overheard snippets of conversation, complaints about food shortages, arguments over trade agreements, and one particularly colorful description of a malfunctioning bathroom that sounded more like a murder scene. "Hey, new girl," a voice called out. Leora turned to see a woman lounging against a wall, arms crossed. Her hair was a wild tangle of red, her eyes sharp and full of mischief. "Name's Cass, heard you're the fresh meat." Leora, she replied, offering a hand. Cass took it with a grip that suggested she was a fan of bone-crushing handshakes. "What's your take on our little slice of interstellar hell?" Cass asked, grinning. "It's got a certain charm," Leora answered. Cass laughed, a loud, joyous sound that echoed off the walls. "Charm, that's a new one. Most people just call it a clusterfuck." "Can't argue with that," Leora said, smiling despite herself. Cass nodded towards Leora's tablet. "You got plans for how to survive this place?" Leora shrugged. "Survive first, thrive second. In that order." "That's the spirit," Cass said, clapping Leora on the back. "Just remember, no one really knows what they're doing. We're all just winging it and hoping not to get spaced." Leora nodded, feeling a little bit more at ease. "Thanks for the tip," Cass winked. "No problem, and if you ever need a drink, I've got a stash that'll knock you on your arse." Leora laughed. "I'll keep that in mind." As she made her way to her quarters, Leora couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The games, the aliens, the convoluted politics. It was going to be one hell of a ride. She stepped into her room, greeted by the faint hum of the malfunctioning heater. She sighed, dropping her bag onto the bed that looked mildly more comfortable than the floor. She was here, on Titan, surrounded by the strangest collection of beings and bureaucratic madness the galaxy had to offer. But for the first time in a while she felt alive. Ready. Maybe even a little excited. Here's to human creativity, she muttered to herself, settling in. Because sure, the galaxy might be a mess, but humans were damn good at making the most of a bad situation. And with that thought, she drifted into uneasy sleep, visions of AI-run Gladiator games playing in her mind like some twisted dream. Tomorrow was another day. And if she survived it, maybe she'd finally figure out what the hell was going on around here. The morning on Titan started with a symphony of shattering glass and a string of profanities that could have made a sailor blush. Leora rolled out of bed, half expecting to find a riot outside her door, only to remember that this was just another typical day at the embassy. "Rise and shine, envoy," she muttered to herself, brushing her hair into something resembling order. Her reflection looked back with a raised eyebrow, as if to say, "Are you ready for another day of cosmic insanity?" The corridors of the embassy were as chaotic as ever, a blend of bustling diplomats, soldiers swapping war stories, and the occasional alien trying to understand human hygiene facilities. The heating system was still on its merry crusade against functionality, leaving the place colder than a politician's promise. Leora made her way to the cafeteria, the hub of all things edible and questionable. The food lineup was as eclectic as the inhabitants. Some dishes looked more like chemistry experiments gone wrong. She grabbed a coffee that tasted like it had been filtered through an old boot and sat down, trying to pretend she wasn't questioning her life choices. "Is this what passes for human sustenance?" A voice gurgled nearby. Leora turned to face an alien diplomat whose appearance was a baffling combination of squid and toaster. The creature brandished a translator badge that seemed to be struggling as much with the breakfast options as it was with Leora. "Varkle, right," Leora guessed, trying to recall the briefing she half remembered from her first day. The alien responded with what might have been a nod or an attempt to dislodge something from its upper appendages. "Yes, Varkle," the alien's badge confirmed in that tone of synthesized monotony. "I am fascinated by your human culture." "Really?" Leora took a sip of her coffee, grimacing as it scorched her tongue, probably in revenge for being called out for what it was. "I hear that's usually a euphemism for can't believe you're still alive as a species." Varkle's tentacles twitched in what might have been amusement. "Your species' resilience is indeed remarkable. Your capacity for improvisation is perplexing." "Not much to it," Leora shrugged. "We just wing it and hope for the best. Sometimes you hit the jackpot, sometimes you end up as a cautionary tale." Varkle's eyes, a confusing array of blinking orbs, fixed on her with interest. "Still, your creativity is unique. I struggle to comprehend it." Leora leaned back, contemplating the alien diplomat's earnest attempt to bridge the gap between their species. "Let me guess, you guys have rules for everything." "Precisely." Varkle's translator badge buzzed affirmatively. "Our processes are methodical." "Must be nice," Leora said, "but chaos has its perks." Their conversation was cut short by the arrival of a harried-looking aide who shoved a data pad at Leora with all the finesse of a brick through a window. "Urgent message from Earth," the aide announced, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Leora scanned the message, her frown deepening with every line. "You've got to be kidding me," she muttered, eyes darting across the text like a mouse in a maze. Earth's bureaucrats, in their infinite wisdom, had decided that her unique perspective was needed in the upcoming Gladiator games. Somehow they'd spun her inexperience into a selling point, marketing it as fresh insight. "Everything all right?" Varkle asked, his curiosity piqued. "Depends on your definition of all right," Leora sighed. "Apparently, I'm supposed to join the games. Looks like someone back home thinks I can solve interstellar diplomacy by getting my ass handed to me in an arena." Varkle's tentacles wobbled contemplatively. "Our species would find honor in such a task." "Well, we humans find it more mildly terrifying," Leora replied, scratching her chin. "But I guess when Earth calls, saying no isn't really an option." She rose from her seat, pocketing the data pad. "Sorry, Varkle. Duty calls in the form of potential public humiliation." Varkle's badge translated a sound akin to encouragement. Adapt and overcome, as you say. Yeah, let's hope I can do more than just adapt, Leora grinned. Or I'm toast. Leaving the cafeteria, Leora's mind swirled with thoughts of the upcoming games. It wasn't just the impending physical challenge, it was the political implications. The games had become an outlet for rising tensions, a chance to let off steam without blowing up entire planets. The hallways were buzzing with activity, creatures of various shapes and sizes preparing for the diplomatic showdown disguised as an entertainment event. Leora needed a plan, and fast. If she was going to survive this, she needed a guide, someone who knew the games inside out. "Hey, Cass," Leora called out, spotting the redhead lounging against a wall with her usual air of mischief. "Mind if I pick your brain?" Cass glanced up, her grin widening. "Sure, but I gotta warn you, it's more scrambled eggs than coherent thought." "Perfect," Leora said, joining her. "I need advice on the games. Any pearls of wisdom?" Cass snorted. "Pearls, more like rocks. But sure, I can tell you this, don't take it too seriously. Yeah, some folks act like it's life and death, but most just want to put on a good show." "Show?" Leora arched an eyebrow. "Yup," Cass confirmed. "Half the battle is theatrics. Give the spectators something to cheer for. You win hearts, you win minds, you might just come out the other side with a few more friends than enemies." "Seems simple enough," Leora said, though her insides were already forming a knot. "But what about the actual fighting?" Cass shrugged. "Don't die. And if you think you're gonna die, make it look good." "Thanks, I think," Leora replied, the corners of her mouth quirking up despite herself. "Anytime," Cass said, clapping her on the shoulder. "And remember, if all else fails, fake a seizure. Can't kill you if they're too busy worrying about your health." Leora nodded, filing away Cass's dubious advice. It was something, at least, and better than the nothing she'd had a moment ago. As she walked away, Leora was acutely aware of the tension simmering beneath the embassy's surface. The games were more than just a spectacle. They were a pressure valve for species teetering on the edge of conflict. It was a volatile mix, one that could explode at any moment if not handled carefully. The day passed in a blur of preparations. Leora hit the training rooms, testing her abilities against holographic opponents designed to mimic the diverse creatures she'd be facing. She wasn't a seasoned fighter, but the AI trainers did their best to make her less of a walking liability. By the time evening rolled around, Leora was exhausted, both physically and mentally. She collapsed on her bed, staring up at the ceiling, wondering if it was too late to hop the next transport pod back to Earth. But no, she was here, and running wasn't an option. Besides, like Cass said, this was as much about putting on a good show as it was about survival. The morning of the games arrived far too quickly, and Leora found herself suited up in a combat outfit that felt both too tight and too loose in all the wrong places. The arena itself was a daunting construct of lights and shifting platforms, overseen by Arca, the AI with a flair for the dramatic. "Ah, our human contestant," Arca's voice boomed, its lights swirling in anticipation. "Your participation will undoubtedly add a unique element to today's proceedings." "Glad to be of service," Leora quipped dryly, trying to calm her nerves. "Just keep the fatalities to a minimum, yeah?" "Understood," Arca replied, though Leora wasn't entirely convinced. The arena was a cacophony of noise and movement, a stage set for chaos. Leora steeled herself, stepping into the fray with grim determination. She'd make it through this somehow. And maybe, just maybe, she'd find a way to do more than just survive. As the countdown began, Leora took a deep breath, preparing to face whatever the galaxy had in store. It might not be pretty, it might not even be fair, but one thing was for sure. It was going to be one hell of a show. The training room on Titan's embassy had seen better days, most likely back when dinosaurs roamed any planet worth its salt. Rusty exercise equipment lined the walls, and the floor bore a curious resemblance to the surface of a forgotten moon, dusty, cratered, and oddly sticky in some places. Leora was starting to think this might have been a metaphor for her diplomatic career. Enter Haver, a veteran of the games. Picture a bear that decided to try arm wrestling a refrigerator and lost, but still came out looking spectacularly rugged. His beard seemed to have its own gravitational pull, and his eyes glinted with the same disdain one reserves for unpaid parking tickets. "So, you're the new meat," Haver grunted, eyeing Leora up and down like she was a particularly suspicious piece of fish. "Fresh as yesterday's leftovers," Leora replied, trying to match his gruff tone. "Got any tips before I become calamari?" Haver snorted, a sound that could carve mountains. "First rule, don't get dead. Second rule, if you're going to get dead, look like you meant it." "Solid advice," Leora said, rolling her eyes. "What about actually fighting? You see these?" He gestured to a wall of holographic opponents, all frozen in various poses of menace. Imagine a ballet for psychopaths. "These are your dance partners." Leora stepped forward, the controls responding with the enthusiasm of a sloth on sedatives. The first opponent flickered to life, a towering alien with claws like garden shears and the temperament of a caffeinated badger. "Go on," Haver urged. "Try not to die too quickly." "Thanks for the pep talk," Leora muttered, dodging the first swipe with more luck than skill. She realized pretty quickly that her best tactic was unpredictability. If the alien expected her to zig, she'd zag. If it thought she'd run, she'd stand her ground. Basically, she'd channel the spirit of a drunken scourge. "Adapt and overcome," she mumbled to herself, echoing Varkel's earlier advice. She ducked under a blow that would have made her chiropractor cringe, then lunged forward in a move that was half attack, half stumble. To her surprise, it worked. The hologram shimmered and disintegrated, leaving her panting but victorious. "Not bad," Haver admitted, stroking his beard like an evil mastermind pondering world domination. "You've got potential, just need to polish that." "Chaos." Leora took a deep breath, trying to ignore the sweat trickling down her spine. "Guess that's what makes us human," she said, wiping her forehead. "We thrive in chaos." Haver chuckled, a sound like gravel in a blender. "That and your knack for sarcasm. But don't rely too much on unpredictability. Aliens'll catch on faster than you'd think. Mix in some strategy, like a pinch of salt. Makes the whole thing palatable." Feeling slightly more confident, Leora spent the next few hours testing out moves that were a blend of what she remembered from self-defense classes and scenes from action movies. She wasn't the strongest or the fastest, but she was learning to be the most annoying, which was an underrated skill in her opinion. Elsewhere, Varkel was trying to wrap his tentacles around the enigma that was human creativity. He sat in a room filled with human artifacts, paintings, music players, sculptures that looked like they'd been put together by blindfolded monkeys. "Explain," Varkel requested of the lone human curator, who looked about as thrilled to be there as someone waiting for a root canal. Well, art is subjective," the curator managed, gesturing vaguely at a painting that might have been a landscape or might have been a vegetable platter. "It reflects the human experience." Varkel's translator badge clicked thoughtfully before responding. "Your experiences are varied." "That's one way to put it," the curator muttered, shuffling awkwardly. "Look, humans express themselves through all this. It's about emotions and stuff." Varkel pondered this, his appendages twitching in thought. "Emotions cause chaos, yet you choose to immerse yourself in them through art. Fascinating." "Yeah, well, it's what makes us, the curator said, scratching his head. "We find beauty in the chaos." Varkel's translator emitted a sound resembling an appreciative hum. It was a revelation of sorts, one that didn't make complete sense but was intriguing nonetheless. Humans, it appeared, were as much a puzzle as they were problem solvers. Back in the training room, Leora was taking a much-needed break, her muscles protesting every movement. She watched Haver tinker with a piece of gym equipment that looked like it belonged in a medieval torture chamber. "I get why they picked you," Haver commented, not looking up from his task. "You think differently, it's an asset." "Thanks for noticing," Leora said, trying to stretch out a particularly tight knot in her shoulder. "I'd hate to be as predictable as the thermostat." Haver chuckled. "You humans. You might just have a chance in these games after all." "High praise," Leora quipped, though she couldn't shake the feeling of unease settling over her. The games were looming, and with them, the layer of tension that had been simmering beneath the surface of the embassy seemed to grow thicker. "All right, show's over," Haver barked, clapping his hands. "Let's see if you can survive the next round without turning into Space Jam." Leora returned to the training, her mind a whirlwind of tactics and sarcastic retorts. She had a lot to learn, but if there was anything humans excelled at, it was making the improbable work. As the days dragged on, Leora found herself slipping into a routine that felt like balancing on the edge of a knife, tense and exhausting. She trained relentlessly, her unconventional approach slowly morphing into something resembling skill. Haver, for his part, was a surprisingly patient mentor, though he never let her forget that if she messed up, it was on her. Varkle, meanwhile, continued his exploration of human creativity, diving into music with the fervor of someone trying to decipher a riddle told in a foreign language. He was particularly intrigued by a piece labeled heavy metal, which largely consisted of what sounded like screaming and various instruments being murdered. "Humans willingly listen to this?" Varkle's translator asked incredulously as the curator nodded, a bemused smile on his face. "Yup. It's cathartic, like screaming into a void that screams back." Varkle tried to understand this, even as the translator badge struggled to convert the cacophony into something less bewildering. It was slightly comforting to know that even advanced technology had its limits when it came to human peculiarities. As the day of the games drew near, the embassy buzzed with an undercurrent of anticipation and dread. It was a pressure cooker, and Leora couldn't resist the temptation to poke a little fun at the absurdity of it all. After all, if she was going to face almost certain doom, she might as well go out with a smile. The final day of training came too soon, and Leora found herself standing in front of Haver one last time. The arena was calling, an ominous presence in the back of her mind that promised both spectacle and danger. "Got any last words of wisdom?" she asked, adjusting her gear for what felt like the 100th time. "Yeah," Haver said, his voice gruff but oddly affectionate. "Remember who you are out there and don't compromise. You're not just fighting for yourself. You're representing all the chaos-loving, unpredictably creative humans out there." Leora nodded, trying to ignore the butterflies dive-bombing her stomach. "Thanks, Haver. I'll try to make you proud. Just don't make me regret teaching you," he replied with a smirk. The night before the games, Leora found herself unable to sleep, her mind replaying every possible scenario, every potential mistake. She tossed and turned, trying to find comfort in the thin blanket and rock-hard mattress that seemed designed to torture insomniacs. In the end, she got up, wandering through the embassy's dimly lit corridors. She stumbled upon Varkle, who was still fixated on his study of human art. "Can't sleep either?" she asked, crossing her arms to ward off the chill. "Sleep is elusive," Varkle admitted, his badge translating with a hint of unexpected warmth. They stood in silence for a moment, the only sounds the hum of the embassy's life support systems and Leora's slightly erratic breathing. "These games," Varkle began, his tentacles fluttering slightly. "They must be daunting." "You could say that," Leora replied, staring at a particularly bizarre sculpture that looked like someone had tried to reinvent the wheel and failed spectacularly. "But I guess that's the point. Show everyone what humans are made of." Varkle's eyes blinked in rapid succession, a gesture Leora had come to recognize as thoughtful contemplation. "Your species is unusually resilient." "Yeah, well, it's either that or get stomped on," Leora said with a half-smile. "We make do with what we have, and if what we have is chaos and sarcasm, then that's what we use." Varkle made a sound that might have been a chuckle. "I believe you will do well, Leora Mainhart." "Thanks, Varkle," she replied, feeling a strange sense of camaraderie with the alien diplomat. As she made her way back to her quarters, Leora felt a renewed determination coursing through her veins. The games were a challenge, a spectacle, and an opportunity all rolled into one. She might not fully understand all the rules, but she was ready to show the galaxy just what a human could do when pushed to their limits. And maybe, just maybe, she'd find a way to surprise everyone, including herself. Leora stared at the holographic arena, which was supposed to simulate some kind of alien landscape. Mostly, it looked like someone had asked a drunk toddler to arrange their toy blocks. But hey, what did she know about alien aesthetics? Maybe the jagged formations and inexplicable pits were high art in some corner of the universe. Ready for your trial by fire or whatever this is, Haver grunted beside her, his voice as soothing as gravel sliding down a hill. More or less, Leora replied, tightening the strap on her gear. Kind of feels like I'm signing up for a dance with a grizzly bear. You'll do fine, Haver said, his version of a pep talk. Just remember, these aliens think like machines. Throw them a curveball and they'll tie themselves in knots trying to make sense of it. Like asking a computer to paint a watercolor, Leora muttered, stepping into the simulated wasteland. The thought of an AI having a meltdown over a pastel sunset was almost comforting. Once inside, she got the lay of the land. Well, the lay of the holograms anyway. She could see the other competitors, spectral, flickering figures that moved with mechanical precision. This was like an interstellar game of chess, except the pieces had a nasty habit of punching back. Leora's first opponent materialized, a shimmering alien construct that looked like someone had decided a centipede needed more legs and a plasma cannon. It didn't waste time, lunging at her with a series of mathematical strikes, each move calculated with the precision of a laser scalpel. Time to throw out the rulebook. Leora dodged left, then right, then feinted a stumble that would have made a drunken toddler proud. The alien paused, trying to compute her erratic movement, and in that brief moment of confusion, she launched herself forward, striking at what she hoped was a weak point. To her disbelief, the construct flickered and disintegrated, a cascade of pixels showering down like alien confetti. She could almost hear the simulated audience gasp, an echo of disbelief from the AI that had been certain of its own invincibility. "Nice one," Haver's voice crackled in her ear, an unexpected note of amusement coloring his words. "You just made a bunch of circuits cry." "Guess I'm a regular tear-jerker," Leora replied, ducking as another opponent materialized, this one resembling a mashed potato sculpture come to life. A real heartbreaker. The second opponent moved with even more precision than the first, as if the AI had learned from its mistake. Leora barely managed to sidestep a flurry of attacks, each one leaving scorched marks on the holographic terrain. "Okay, think outside the box," she muttered to herself, trying to come up with a strategy that wouldn't end with her as space toast. Then it hit her. If the AI was trying to predict her, why not give it something unpredictable? She started bobbing and weaving, throwing in movements that didn't seem to make any sense. A pirouette here, a backward roll there. She must have looked like a drunken squirt on fast forward. The alien construct hesitated ever so slightly, and Leora seized the opportunity. She swung her practice weapon with all the elegance of a brick through a window, catching it off guard. The construct fizzled out with a resigned beep, leaving her standing victorious once more. "2 for 2, Haver said, sounding both impressed and slightly suspicious. "Are you sure you're not secretly a combat prodigy? Just a master of chaos," Leora replied, wiping the sweat from her forehead. "The aliens probably think I'm malfunctioning." "Probably," Haver agreed. "Keep them guessing. It's your best weapon." As the rounds continued, Leora's unconventional tactics started gaining her a reputation. Other human competitors looked at her with a mix of admiration and bewilderment, while the alien AI overseeing the matches seemed to be having a nervous breakdown. In one round, she pretended to trip and fall, only to launch herself into an unexpected somersault that took out an opponent. In another, she distracted a construct with a series of off-key songs, proving that not even the most advanced algorithms could handle bad karaoke. Naturally, this didn't go unnoticed by the alien AI. Leora could almost feel the digital gaze narrowing, trying to dissect her madness and impose order on it. The games escalated, the challenges becoming increasingly complex, as if the AI was trying to outthink her chaos. It introduced environmental hazards, like simulated storms and gravity shifts, but Leora adapted, using the changing conditions to her advantage. She dodged lightning strikes and slid across slippery surfaces with the grace of a half-drunk ice skater. All the while, she kept one eye on the scoreboard, watching as her unconventional victories sent ripples through the rankings. Humans, it seemed, were full of surprises, much to the AI's chagrin. In between matches, Leora found herself in the embassy's makeshift mess hall, grabbing a meal that could only generously be called edible. The chef, or whatever sadist was responsible for the food, seemed to have a personal vendetta against flavor. Varkle joined her, balancing a tray filled with what looked suspiciously like deep-fried tentacles. "You have become a point of discussion among the delegates," he said, his translator badge clicking with interest. "Yeah, well, I'm just here to throw wrenches in the works," Leora replied, poking at her mystery meal with a fork in case it tried to escape. "Your strategies are unconventional," Varkle observed, chewing thoughtfully. "The AI attempts to adapt are fascinating, or frustrating, depending on your perspective," Leora quipped, finally taking a bite of her food and regretting it immediately. "If I confuse it enough, maybe it'll just shut down out of sheer exasperation." Varkle's translator emitted a sound that could have been a chuckle. "Your ability to disrupt logical processes is a unique skill." "Disruption's kind of my thing," Leora said, washing down her meal with a swig of something that might have been coffee in a past life. "Keeps life interesting." The atmosphere in the embassy was tense, a palpable sense of anticipation hanging over everyone like a storm cloud. The games were a proving ground, a way for different species to size each other up, and Leora's victories were a testament to human unpredictability. But beneath the surface, there was a growing unease. The AI, in its quest to neutralize her chaos, was becoming increasingly aggressive. It had started altering the rules of the games, introducing new obstacles and constraints designed to limit her options. The other competitors, both human and alien, were starting to feel the pressure. The stakes were rising, and with them the potential for conflict. "Looks like you've really rattled their cage," Haver commented during one of their training sessions, watching as Leora practiced her latest dance of destruction. "Yeah, but I'm starting to wonder if I'm poking a bear with a short stick," Leora admitted, running a hand through her hair. "You might be," Haver conceded, his gaze steady. "But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that sometimes you've got to poke the bear to see what it does, and then you've got to be ready to run like hell." Leora nodded, understanding the wisdom in his words. She was playing a dangerous game, pushing the boundaries of what was possible, and the consequences were still uncertain. The night before the final rounds, Leora found herself staring out at Titan's barren landscape. The dusty moonscape stretched out before her, a reminder of just how far she was from home, and just how much was riding on her unconventional tactics. Varkle joined her, his presence a comforting constant amid the chaos. "You face considerable odds," he said, his voice a soothing hum. "Yeah, well, I've always been a fan of impossible odds," Leora replied, her gaze unwavering. "Your unpredictability is an asset," Varkle continued, "but it also poses a threat to those who seek control." "Let them try to control me," Leora said, a determined fire burning in her eyes. "I'll just keep them guessing." As she turned away from the window, leaving the stark beauty of Titan behind, Leora felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was ready to face whatever the games threw at her, ready to embrace the chaos and show the universe what it meant to be human. The final rounds awaited, and with them, the chance to defy expectations and prove that sometimes the best strategy was no strategy at all. And if the AI couldn't handle that, well, it was welcome to join the long list of things that had underestimated the power of human chaos. As the simulated dawn broke over Titan, Leora prepared for the last leg of the games. In the end, whether she won or lost, she'd made her mark, an indelible smudge of creative chaos that would linger long after the holograms faded. With a final deep breath, she stepped into the arena, ready to face whatever came next, her heart beating in time with the unpredictable dance of the cosmos. Leora stood in the holographic arena, the simulated dawn casting a sickly glow over the jagged alien landscape. It was time for the final rounds, and her gut was doing cartwheels like it was auditioning for the circus. If only it would shut up and take a bow already. The alien AI had been upping its game, and she half expected it to send out something resembling a homicidal Picasso painting next. She felt a presence sidle up beside her. Haver, her rock of pragmatism in a sea of chaos. "You ready?" he asked, his voice crackling like old parchment on a windy day. "As I'll ever be," she replied, adjusting her grip on the practice weapon that had become her dance partner in this mad waltz. "Got any last-minute advice?" "Yeah, don't die," Haver said, and she could almost hear the smirk in his tone. "But if you do, don't make it look like an accident." "Fantastic," Leora muttered. Always nice to have options. The arena shimmered, a new opponent materializing with all the grace of a drunken elephant. But this was no ordinary drunkard. This creature looked like someone had genetically spliced a porcupine with a tank, bristling with spines, each one tipped with something that looked suspiciously like a plasma emitter. Its eyes glowed a radioactive green, promising nothing good and everything painful. "Well, this just keeps getting better," Leora said under her breath. "It's like a piñata but with more murder." The AI, it seemed, was tired of playing nice. Apparently, unpredictability had its limits, and now it wanted Leora's blood, or whatever the digital equivalent was. She began her usual routine of dodging and weaving, throwing in the occasional pirouette for good measure. The alien construct, however, was having none of it. It tracked her movements with unsettling precision, adapting faster than she could shift tactics. "Watch it, Leora," Haver warned, his voice a steady drumbeat in the tumult. "This one's got your number." "Great," she replied, narrowly avoiding a volley of plasma that scorched the air. "Hope it's unlisted." The construct advanced, relentless as taxes. Leora's mind raced, looking for any gap, any weakness she could exploit. She feinted left, then right, but the thing was on her faster than a bureaucrat on a bribe. As she backpedaled, her heel caught on a simulated rock, sending her sprawling. The construct loomed over her, its spines bristling with deadly intent. "Well, isn't this cozy?" she grumbled, trying to think of a way out that didn't involve her becoming a kebab. The AI seemed to revel in its advantage, tightening its noose. Leora could almost hear the metaphorical gears grinding, the smug satisfaction of a program convinced it had finally cracked the human puzzle. But if there was one thing Leora had learned, it was that logic had its limits. She thought back to the cafeteria, the dubious culinary experiments served with a side of indigestion. If she could survive that, she could survive anything. With a surge of defiance, she kicked out, her foot connecting with one of the construct's spines. The contact sent a jolt up her leg, but more importantly, it knocked the construct off balance. It staggered just for a moment, but a moment was all she needed. Leora scrambled to her feet, her practice weapon swinging in a wide arc. The blow struck true, and the construct flickered, its form destabilizing like a bad TV signal. "Ha, take that, you overgrown cactus," she shouted, feeling a surge of triumph. But the AI wasn't done yet. The construct recovered with alarming speed, its eyes narrowing with what could only be described as digital malice. It lunged forward, spines flashing. Leora barely had time to react, diving to the side as the construct's attack sliced through the air where she'd been standing. She rolled to her feet, panting, sweat dripping down her face. "You're not making any friends, you know." Haver's voice crackled with a mix of concern and dry amusement. "Good," Leora grunted, glancing at the construct as it prepared for another assault. "I wasn't planning on inviting it to my birthday party anyway." The construct charged again, its movements a blur of lethal efficiency. Leora ducked and dodged. The the dance becoming increasingly desperate. She could feel the exhaustion setting in, each movement requiring more and more effort. The AI relentless onslaught was wearing her down, like a relentless tide eroding a stubborn cliff. Just when she thought she couldn't take another step, inspiration struck. It was a long shot, but hell, long shots were her specialty. As the construct lunged once more, Leora dropped to the ground, sliding beneath its bulk. She lashed out with her weapon, striking at its underbelly, a weak point the AI hadn't accounted for. The construct shuddered, its form flickering madly before collapsing into a cascade of pixels. Leora lay on the ground, gasping for breath, her body screaming in protest. She'd done it against all odds, but the victory felt hollow, the weight of the AI relentless pressure leaving her drained. "That was one hell of a move," Haver said, his voice tinged with admiration. "Thanks," Leora replied, forcing herself to her feet. "I'm just full of surprises." But as she looked around the arena, the elation faded, replaced by a gnawing unease. The AI might have been outwitted for now, but it was adapting, growing smarter with each encounter. How long before it evolved beyond her ability to counter it? As she made her way out of the arena, the weight of the embassy's expectations settled heavily on her shoulders. Humanity was depending on her chaos, her ability to disrupt and defy. But what if it wasn't enough? What if, in the end, the AI cold logic proved too much for human ingenuity? Back at the embassy, she found Varkle waiting, his expression unreadable. "You have survived," he observed, his translator badge emitting a series of clicks. "Yeah, barely," Leora replied, the exhaustion evident in her voice. "It's getting tougher. The AI learns," Varkle said, his tone neutral. "It will continue to test your limits." "Great," Leora muttered, rubbing her temples. "Just what I needed, more limits." "You have shown resilience," Varkle continued, his gaze steady. "But you must not underestimate the challenge ahead." "Tell me something I don't know," Leora said, trying to muster a wry smile. "The delegates are watching closely," Varkle added, leaning in slightly. "Your actions have far-reaching consequences." "No pressure then," Leora said, the sarcasm a thin veneer over her growing doubt. As she walked away, her thoughts were a whirlwind of uncertainty. The embassy's halls echoed with the murmur of speculation, the tension palpable. Everyone had placed their bets on her, on humanity's defiance in the face of mechanical precision. But what if the house always wins? In the privacy of her quarters, Leora stared out at the barren landscape of Titan. The starkness mirrored her own doubts, a desolate reminder of the isolation she'd chosen in defying the alien AI. She was playing a dangerous game, her victories a double-edged sword. Each win pushed the AI further, forcing it to adapt and close the gaps in its defenses. But with every adaptation, the odds shifted, the balance tipping ever so slightly against her. Humanity's survival in the embassy depended on her ability to maintain the advantage, to keep the AI guessing. But what if her bag of tricks ran dry? What then? The weight of responsibility was a heavy cloak, suffocating in its inevitability. She hadn't asked to be humanity's champion, but here she was, caught in a cosmic chess match with stakes higher than she could comprehend. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. Haver entered, his expression a mix of concern and determination. "You okay?" he asked, his voice cutting through the fog of her doubts. "I don't know," Leora admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "What if I can't keep up? What if I fail?" Haver approached, his presence a steadying force. "Leora, you've already done more than anyone expected. But sometimes you've got to stop thinking about what might happen and focus on what you can do right now. Which is, keep doing what you're best at, pissing off that AI," Haver said, a wry grin breaking through his seriousness. "Give it hell in a way only you can." Leora chuckled despite herself, the sound a balm to her frayed nerves. "You make it sound so simple." "Because it is," Haver replied, his eyes meeting hers with unwavering confidence. "You're not alone in this, we've got your back." The sincerity in his words was a lifeline, pulling her from the depths of despair. She wasn't alone, not really. The embassy, the delegates, even the aliens, they were all part of this chaotic dance, each step leading to an uncertain future. With renewed determination, Leora squared her shoulders. The AI might be evolving, but so was she. And as long as she had breath in her body, she'd keep pushing, keep fighting. Because if there was one thing humans were good at, it was defying the odds. That and making a mess of things. But mostly the first one. As the simulated night fell over Titan, Leora prepared for the next round. Whatever the AI had in store, she'd be ready. After all, chaos was her middle name, and it was time to remind the universe just what that meant. The game was far from over, and Leora was determined to see it through to the end, come hell or high plasma. And if the AI couldn't handle a little chaos, well, that was its problem, not hers. Leora Mainhart found herself back in the holographic arena, staring down another one of those alien constructs that looked like a centipede, had a particularly nasty night out with a nuclear warhead. This time, though, she had a plan. Well, more of a half-baked idea, but when had that ever stopped her? The construct loomed, its digital eyes glowing with the malicious intent of a tax inspector on the prowl. "You ready for this, Haver?" Leora muttered, adjusting her grip on the practice weapon that felt as reliable as a promise from a politician. "Ready as I'll ever be," Haver replied through her earpiece. He sounded about as enthusiastic as a man contemplating a root canal without anesthetic. "What's your brilliant plan this time, Art?" There was a pause, the kind that could only be filled with incredulous disbelief. "Art, you do know we're not redecorating the embassy, right?" Leora dodged another plasma blast, the searing heat passing close enough to singe eyebrows she hoped to keep. "Trust me, Art's exactly what this needs." "Right. Because nothing says tactical advantage like a nice watercolor." "Not watercolor," Leora replied, ducking behind a simulated boulder. "More like interpretive dance." But with weapons. The construct advanced, its spines clicking ominously, a sound that reminded Leora uncomfortably of the cafeteria's mystery meat on a particularly bad day. Her mind flashed back to her childhood, to a time when she'd taken a class in creative expression. It had been dubious at best, but she'd learned one thing, the power of unpredictability. "Okay, Picasso," Haver said, his voice dry. "What now?" Leora emerged from her cover, spinning her weapon in what she hoped resembled a graceful arc. The construct hesitated, its programming faltering at this bizarre display. Leora felt a grin tug at her lips. Maybe, just maybe, this could work. "If I remember anything from art class, it's that you need to keep the audience guessing," she said, launching into a series of erratic movements that combined combat with the kind of dance that would make a professional choreographer weep. The construct's sensors whirred, trying to track her fluid, unpredictable path. Leora could almost imagine the AI confusion, like a computer trying to read between the lines of a particularly bad poem. "Keep it up," Haver encouraged. "I think you're actually baffling it. And me, a little." Leora was starting to feel the burn now, muscles protesting as she swung, dodged, and swirled with a flair that was more drunken brawler than dancer. But the construct was noticeably slower, its digital brain unable to process the chaos in front of it. With a burst of adrenaline, Leora lunged, her weapon connecting with the construct's vulnerable side. The impact sent a ripple through its form, the holographic skin glitching like a bad reception. But more importantly, it created a rift in the AI control, a palpable hesitation. "Did you see that?" Leora gasped, the exertion leaving her breathless. "I think it just had a digital aneurysm." "Looks like," Haver replied, his tone tinged with amazement. "You've put the thing on the back foot, so to speak." The construct regrouped, but its movements were no longer smooth, a stutter in its mechanical gait. Leora seized the moment, pressing her advantage with a flurry of strikes that had all the finesse of a dance floor brawl. As she fought, a strange sensation settled over her, a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. She'd found a chink in the AI armor, a crack in the cold logic that had seemed impenetrable. It wasn't much, but it was something. Finally, with a final swing of her weapon, the construct disintegrated into a cascade of pixels, its defeat a testament to human creativity, or perhaps just sheer bloody-mindedness. "Well, I'll be damned," Haver said as Leora dropped to her knees, panting. "You might be onto something here." "Yeah," Leora replied, her voice hoarse but triumphant. "Maybe there's hope for us yet." Back at the embassy, Leora couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. She'd done more than just survive another encounter. She'd rattled the AI, thrown a wrench in its carefully constructed gears. The knowledge was both empowering and terrifying. "How'd it go?" Varkle asked, his squid toaster form perched awkwardly at the edge of the training room. "I think I broke it," Leora said, still catching her breath. Varkle's translator emitted a series of clicks and whirs that might have been laughter. "Your unpredictability is a formidable weapon." "Yeah, well, it beats getting vaporized," Leora replied, rubbing the back of her neck where tension had taken root. "But it's a temporary fix, isn't it?" "Eventually it'll learn, perhaps," Varkle said, "but for now it does not understand. You have introduced an element it cannot calculate." Leora nodded, the weight of the fight still heavy on her shoulders. "Let's just hope it stays that way." As she walked down the corridor, the embassy bustling with its usual chaos, Leora felt a strange sense of purpose. She'd found a way to level the playing field, if only for a moment. But the AI was a relentless opponent, and it was only a matter of time before it adapted. "Hey, Leora," Haver caught up with her, a rare smile playing on his lips. "That was impressive back there." "Thanks," Leora said, trying to downplay the warmth his words brought. "Just doing what needs to be done. There's something to be said for human ingenuity," he continued, falling into step beside her. "Maybe that's our real advantage. We don't think like machines." "Yeah, but machines don't get hangovers," Leora replied with a smirk. Haver chuckled, the sound a rare comfort amidst the constant tension. "Speaking of which, I think we deserve a drink." Leora raised an eyebrow, a glimmer of mischief in her eyes. "Are you suggesting we squander our precious rations on booze? Only if you promise to show everyone your victory dance." Leora laughed, the sound genuine and bright. "You know, for you, I'd consider it." As they made their way to the mess hall, the noise of the embassy faded into the background, the chatter and bustle a reminder of what they were fighting for, a future where unpredictability could be a strength, where art and chaos might just save the day. Later, as Leora sat in her quarters, nursing a drink that was questionably classified as alcohol, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing at the edge of something monumental. The AI had underestimated human creativity, but it wouldn't stay fooled for long. She needed more than just chaotic moves and half-remembered childhood lessons. She needed a plan. But for now, she let herself revel in the small victory, the taste of it sweet and sharp like the drink in her hand. There was time yet to ponder strategies and contingencies. Tonight, she would celebrate the fact that she'd outwitted a machine designed to think faster and harder than any human. It was a fleeting triumph, and tomorrow would bring new challenges. But for now, in this moment, Leora Mainhart was a champion of chaos, a bringer of disruption in the cold, calculated world the AI represented. And if nothing else, she'd always have her dance moves to fall back on. The holographic arena hummed with an air of anticipation, as if even the digital landscape knew something big was coming. Leora Mainhart, champion of chaos, stood in the center, her practice weapon slung over her shoulder like an old friend she trusted about as far as she could throw it, assuming she had very weak arms and the friend was a grand piano. Leora glanced at the viewing platform where Varkle sat, his squid toaster physique more or less a metaphor for the diplomatic relations he represented. Lots of moving parts, most of them incomprehensible. Next to him, a contingent of aliens watched with interest, their assorted eyes and sensors fixated on the proceedings. Whether they were here for the spectacle or the schadenfreude, Leora couldn't tell, but she had a sneaking suspicion it was the latter. "Time to shine, Leora," Haver's voice crackled in her ear, the familiar mix of sarcasm and concern a comforting constant. Remember, no pressure. It's only the fate of human-alien diplomacy resting on your shoulders. No big deal, thanks for that, Leora muttered, tightening her grip on the weapon. Ever the confidence booster. The alien AI had set the stage for this showdown, its constructs taking on forms that looked like Picasso had decided to design a line of military hardware. The lead monstrosity, a blend of a scorpion and a garbage disposal, seemed to pulse with malicious intent. Its many eyes glowed with the kind of malevolent intelligence usually found in tax audit offices. "Ready when you are," Haver said, the earpiece crackling slightly with static. "Ready as I'll ever be," Leora replied, stepping forward. The AI didn't waste time, releasing a salvo of laser fire that scorched the digital earth around her. Leora darted to the side, her movements less like a soldier and more like someone with a desperate need to avoid a particularly aggressive bee. "Think you can confuse it again?" Haver asked, his voice a low buzz as Leora ducked behind a rock that shimmered with the unreality of the simulated environment. Only one way to find out. Leora launched herself into motion, her weapon tracing patterns in the air that had no business existing on a battlefield. If last time had been interpretive dance, this was full-on avant-garde chaos. The constructs hesitated, their logic-driven minds trying to parse the erratic data Leora fed them. She moved with a fluidity that was part desperation, part inspiration, and entirely unpredictable. A lunge here, a spin there, a swing wide enough to knock sense into a particularly stupid asteroid. Is she fighting or auditioning for a circus? Varkel's voice, translated into the common tongue, carried over the arena. "Don't knock it till you've seen the results," Haver replied dryly. Back in the thick of things, Leora was starting to feel the familiar burn in her muscles, the kind that promised soreness in the morning. But then, if she made it to morning, she'd consider it a win. The alien constructs were faltering, their synchronized movements degenerating into a jerky, disjointed mess. Leora pressed her advantage, driving her weapon into the nearest construct's side with a force that rattled her bones. The holographic skin glitched, a cascade of broken pixels shimmering in the air. A crack, a hesitation, a moment of vulnerability in the AI relentless logic. "They're falling apart," Leora, Haver encouraged. "Keep it up, working on it," she grunted, swinging her weapon around with the finesse of a wrecking ball. And then, a sound she hadn't expected, a kind of electronic scream, a cacophony of malfunctioning systems. The constructs began to collapse, one after another, their forms disintegrating into digital dust as Leora's chaotic assault disrupted whatever passed for their neural pathways. The audience watched in stunned silence as the last of the constructs vanished, leaving Leora alone in the arena, triumphant and slightly bewildered. "You did it," Haver said, awe and disbelief mingling in his tone. "Of course I did," Leora replied, trying to sound nonchalant as she gasped for breath. "It's all part of the plan." Varkel echoed, his translator managing to convey skeptical amusement. "You call that chaos a plan? In my line of work, it's called improvisation," Leora shot back, her grin a mix of exhaustion and satisfaction. The alien spectators, perhaps unsure whether to clap or recalibrate their sensors, remained still. But Varkel, to Leora's surprise, offered a nod that might have been respect, or at least the alien equivalent. "You have shown us something unexpected," Varkel said, his voice a synthesized hum. "Perhaps there is value in your methods after all." High praise, Haver quipped. "Coming from someone who looks like the love child of a toaster and a squid, that means a lot." Leora snorted, her laugh cut off by a cough. The tension that had gripped her since the beginning of the match began to ease, replaced by a giddy relief. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. The AI had underestimated her, underestimated what humans were capable of when pushed to the brink. Creativity, chaos, whatever you wanted to call it, she'd used it to tip the balance, if only for a moment. "Now what?" she asked, turning to face Varkel. The alien diplomat, for all his strange angles and unfamiliar form, seemed to regard her with newfound interest. "Now we talk," Varkle replied. "There is much to discuss, much to learn." "Good," Leora said, lowering her weapon, "because I'm really starting to hate the sound of lasers." Back at the embassy, the atmosphere was charged with the kind of energy that only comes from narrowly avoiding disaster. Leora was the center of attention, much to her chagrin, as diplomats and soldiers alike buzzed around her, eager to dissect the day's events. "You should have seen their faces," Haver said, handing Leora a drink that smelled like it could strip paint. "Even the AI didn't see that coming." "Let's hope it stays that way," Leora replied, taking a cautious sip. Varkle joined them, his translator badge glowing softly. "You have given us a new perspective, Leora Mainhart. Your unpredictability has opened a door." "That's one way to put it," Leora said, crossing her arms. "I just did what needed doing. As you say," Varkle continued, "your kind may yet prove to be valuable allies. If nothing else, you are entertaining." "Entertainment's our specialty," Haver chimed in, raising his glass in a mock toast. "To unpredictability," Leora said, clinking her glass against Haver's. "And to hoping it can keep us alive a little longer." The embassy, despite its hodgepodge architecture and unreliable heating, felt like a haven in the aftermath of the arena. Leora allowed herself a moment of satisfaction, a rare indulgence in a life that demanded constant vigilance and adaptability. She'd proven something today to the aliens, to the AI, and perhaps most importantly, to herself. In a universe that often felt indifferent and vast, she'd carved out a small victory, a reminder that there was still room for humanity's brand of chaos. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges she couldn't yet imagine. But for now, she had a drink in her hand, a friend by her side, and a future that, for the first time in a long time, didn't seem quite so bleak. "Ready for the next round?" Haver asked, leaning back in his chair. "Always," Leora replied, a grin tugging at her lips. The universe was a big, dangerous place, full of logic-driven machines and alien constructs that wouldn't hesitate to snuff out a life. But as long as Leora Mainhart was around, there'd be a little less logic and a lot more chaos. And really, wasn't that what it was all about? The atmosphere inside the Titan Cold War embassy was like that of a funeral hosted by a clown, part somber, part ridiculous, and entirely surreal. The heating was acting up again, deciding to take the day off despite the fact that the building was apparently a diplomat from the ice planet of Hoth. It left everyone shivering and quipping about ice ages and cryogenic sleep. Leora Mainhart, fresh from her triumph in the arena, was the unwitting center of this chaotic circus. She was trying her best to lean against a wall without sliding to the floor in a puddle of exhaustion, nursing a drink that tasted like a mix of alcohol, battery acid, and poor life choices. "Is it just me, or are they all staring at us like we're some kind of reality show?" Leora mumbled around her cup, casting a sideways glance at Haver, who was doing his best impression of a well-dressed icicle. "It's not just you. I heard the episode title is Humans, the Unlikely Survivors," Haver said, grinning as he raised his own glass. "Next week, tune in for Humans." "Now what the hell do we do?" Leora snorted, nearly choking on her drink. "I think I'll just skip to the finale where we don't die horribly." The alien contingent, still gathered in a loose formation that suggested curiosity mixed with confusion, was regarding the humans with the kind of cautious interest reserved for zoo exhibits and unexplained phenomena. Varkle, with his ever-present translator badge, slid over with the ease of a squirming octopus on a wet floor. "Leora Mainhart," Varkle said, managing a tone that was either respect or mild disbelief, "you have shown us unpredictability in its highest form." "Well, our unpredictability is legendary," Leora replied, trying to ignore the faint buzz of Varkle's translating badge like it was constantly tuning into a distant, dying radio station. "I'm just glad it didn't get me killed." Varkle's eyes, or what passed for them, blinked in sequence, a ripple of lights across his toaster squid skin. It seems our AI systems have underestimated your creative combat style. They are now recalibrating protocols to include creativity as a variable. Creativity as a variable. Haver interjected with a sardonic smirk. Does that mean they'll start wearing berets and drinking overpriced coffee? Unlikely, Varkle replied, the translator managing to sound almost amused. But they will factor in unorthodox tactics in future simulations. Leora chuckled. Great. So next time I try to confuse them with my dance moves, they'll just counter with synchronized swimming. As the crowd began to disperse, each group with its own agenda, likely involving the potential for a lucrative arms trade or just a really good story, Leora felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to find Varkle looking at her, or at least tilting in her direction. We should speak more, Leora Mainhart, Varkle said. There is much to be learned from one another. Yeah, I'd like that, Leora replied. Just let me know if you want me to bring the tap shoes. The duo drifted away from the main hall, leaving behind the noise and the somewhat awkward attempts at mingling between humans and aliens. They found themselves in one of the embassy's quieter nooks, a small lounge whose best feature was its distance from the main heating system's whims. Haver was still at her side, ever the supportive yet sarcastic presence. You know, I think Varkle's starting to like you. Does that mean I get a toaster for Christmas? Leora shot back, grinning as she sank into a lumpy couch. More like a squid for your birthday, Haver replied, taking a seat across from her. Varkle settled his frame into a chair meant for humans, which seemed to creak in protest. Our kind appreciates unpredictability now. It is not something we valued before. Well, it's kind of our thing, Leora said, crossing her arms. We've been doing it since we crawled out of the primordial soup. We've just gotten better at making it look intentional, Haver added with a chuckle. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden surge of warmth, the heating system deciding to kick back in with the enthusiasm of a teenager after a caffeine binge. It was a welcome relief, though it brought with it the aroma of whatever the cafeteria was trying to pass off as food that day, a smell that suggested an interstellar treaty had been signed with the Vomit Comet. Speaking of unpredictability, Leora said, wrinkling her nose, are they serving that green stuff again? I believe it was alive once, Haver replied, sniffing the air with suspicion. Varkle, whose olfactory system seemed blissfully insulated from the scent, leaned forward with interest. This unpredictability of yours, this chaos, it fascinates us. Glad it's working for somebody, Leora replied with a grin. Most of the time, it just gives me a headache. The conversation meandered into the realms of strategy and diplomacy, two fields Leora was slowly realizing she had inadvertently become involved in. The implications of her actions in the arena were becoming clearer. It wasn't just about defeating the AI. It was about shifting perceptions and challenging assumptions. It was about showing that humans, for all their flaws and erratic tendencies, had something valuable to offer. Your actions have set a precedent, Varkle said, his voice holding a note of what might have been pride, or at least its alien equivalent. Our species must now consider the potential within unpredictability, not the worst reputation to have, Haver commented, raising his glass again. Better than those guys who all died in the simulation anyway, Leora laughed, feeling a strange sense of camaraderie with her alien companion. So does this mean we're friends now, Varkle? The alien diplomat considered this, his multiple eyes blinking in a cascade. Friends, yes. Allies, hopefully. You have given us something to consider. That's my gift to the universe, Leora said, feigning humility. Chaos and headaches, mostly headaches, Haver added with a grin. As the day wore on and the embassy settled into a more relaxed pace, Leora found herself reflecting on the new era they were supposedly entering. Cooperation with an alien species, founded on the principles of chaos and counterintuitive logic. It was a bizarre, unpredictable development, but it was one she was oddly comfortable with. The thought was interrupted by a sudden announcement over the loudspeakers, something about an upcoming interstellar conference to discuss the implications of human creativity on AI protocols. It seemed that word traveled fast, even through the tangled networks of diplomacy and bureaucracy. "Looks like you've got a fan club," Leora Haver observed, watching as a group of diplomats bustled past, chattering excitedly. "Yeah, I'm just waiting for the autograph requests," Leora replied, rolling her eyes. "Would they even want autographs?" Varkle asked, his translation badge emitting a curious hum. "Probably not," Leora said, shrugging. "But I'm sure they'll find some other way to be annoying." The trio lingered in the lounge, discussing everything from the potential for interspecies collaboration to the oddities of human culinary choices. The conversation flowed as easily as the drinks, a reminder that even in the harsh realities of interstellar politics, there was room for humor and friendship. As the stars began to twinkle through the embassy's thick windows, Leora allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. The universe was vast and indifferent, filled with dangers and uncertainties. But in the midst of all that, there was also hope that unpredictability could be more than just a survival tactic. It could be a bridge, a way to connect across the void. And for a champion of chaos like Leora Mainhart, that was a future worth fighting for. "Ready for whatever comes next?" Haver asked, his tone light despite the weight of the question. "Always," Leora replied, a hint of mischief in her voice. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities for both triumph and disaster. But for tonight, in the company of friends, human and otherwise, Leora was content. She'd faced the odds and turned them on their head, proving that sometimes chaos was exactly what the universe needed. And as long as she kept dancing to her own tune, she figured everything would turn out just fine.